panelists, we also have to have an equally eminent moderator from the region. We are privileged to have Mr. Gauri Shankar. Mr. Gauri Shankar is also a paint industry veteran with several years experience in Nerolac paints. A sales management specialist and an effective trainer himself, Mr. Gauri Shankar is currently involved with paint industry as a consultant and as a service provider. He is closely associated with Paints and Coating Skill Council as a consultant and advisor, and he's also a very successful entrepreneur. With this introduction, I now request Mr. Jagdish Acharya to kindly initiate the proceedings with his opening remarks. Over to you, Jagdish.
Vanakkam, and thank you all for being with us today. I would like to warmly welcome all of you. In particular, I would like to just make a mention of Mr. Hariharan Putran, who is also with us, Mr. N.K. Bhatia, Mr. Dilip Raghavan, and so many others. But these are eminent people from the industry, and there are other eminent people also. Please don't pardon me if I missed, but welcome, a special welcome to all of you. We are in a celebratory mode. 75 years of the country, at the birth of our country and the independence that we got, we are in a celebratory mode. The pandemic has not disheartened us. The pandemic has not demotivated us. I think there is tremendous amount of resilience in our mind, in our hearts and in our mind. And so it's with that spirit of rejuvenation that we have arranged a series of webinars, the first of which is being held today. And I'm greatly honored to announce to you that Mr. B.G. Kurian will officially launch the webinar today. Mr. Suresh Mohandas has already introduced the eminent panelists. I just want to introduce the subject and then hand it over to Mr. Kurian to request him to officially launch the webinar, and then Gauri can take over as the moderator. As a paint person, it is my dream that one day in the future, painting as a skill will be respected the way it is respected as a vocation in other countries, developed countries. It is my dream that the painter gets a livelihood which is matching to that of an engineer. It is my dream that in our country there is respect for aesthetics, protection of assets, and the utilitarian aspect of the paint. And I think the dream is not unrealistic. We are a big nation, we are a developing nation, and the time will come when these skills will be understood for their worth, respected as a vocation. But for that to happen, we'll need to take some bold steps. And I think that is what this subject is all about. How to change the perception of a painter and painting itself. We are all stakeholders invested in this exercise. We are stakeholders who will benefit from this exercise. We are stakeholders who are responsible to make this happen. It is with that view in mind that we have started this first series, and we will have a series of webinars which will address these issues of skilling in the paint and coating sector. When we thought, Suresh and I thought about, and my team thought about the word change in the skilling ecosystem, we couldn't think of a better person than Mr. Kurian himself, who was as early as in the early, late 70s, the proponent of change in the paint industry. He was the first marketing person who said color is beyond aesthetics. He was the first marketing person who brought decor into homes, who thought of decor services as a service to be given to the customers. He was one person who treated decorative aspects of paint as well as the protective aspects of paint as a very important skill. And so it is only natural that he was instrumental in the birth of Paints and Coating Skill Council. So really very honored that he is with us inaugurating this session today. And he's just released a book, Half a Century and Still at the Crease, which will be published by Paint in, which will be promoted by Paint India. And we have been, very fortunate to receive the first copy for a review. And it's a fantastic book. I've just started reading it, and it looks like a fantastic book. Just to show you what that book is, I'll just give you a glimpse of the first page. This is how it is, and I'm sure you'll be able to get it very soon. As I said, this is going to be a very interesting topic for years to come. But as a start, we would like to begin now with the blessings of Mr. Kurian. Mr. Kurian, we would request you to officially inaugurate this series of webinar, and then I'll request Gauri to take over as the moderator. Mr. Kurian.
Thank you, Jagdish. I'm most privileged to be invited as the inaugurator of the series of webinars sponsored by PCSC for the 75th anniversary of our Independence Day. I have always been a marketing man from the very beginning. In fact, I started my selling and marketing career when I was still in college. Set up a bookshop or a book agency and so on. But everywhere I was essentially looking at what is the customer looking for and can I provide that? Because there was no other way that I could get my pocket money because my father couldn't afford to give me any pocket money for my student days. Essentially, selling either a service or a product has to essentially look at what is the customer looking for. And like Peter Drucker said, the customer is the, if there is no customer, there is no business. And therefore, to be looking at the customer as our business. And I have great pleasure in inaugurating this series of webinars that are being conducted by PCSC for the year 75th year of our independence. So here we declare it open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Just like to request all the panelists to switch on their videos so that we can take a good shot from, request all of you to switch on your videos. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll now request Mr. Gauri Shankar to initiate the discussion on the subject. Gauri, all over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And vanakkam to all of you. இன்னைக்கு இருக்கக்கூடிய இந்த டிஸ்கஷன் தங்கிலீஷ்ல இருக்க போகுது. தங்கிலீஷ் அப்படின்னா இங்கிலீஷ் இல்லாத தமிழ் இல்ல, இப்போ தமிழ் இல்லாத இங்கிலீஷ் இல்லை. அப்படிதான் நம்மளோட நடைமுறை வாழ்க்கையில இருக்கும். அதனால இன்னைக்கு இருக்கக்கூடிய டிஸ்கஷன் பார்த்தீங்கன்னாக்கா தங்கிலீஷ் என்ற லாங்குவேஜ்ல தான் இருக்க போறோம். ரைட், ரொம்ப அருமையான டாபிக், ரொம்ப அழகான டாபிக். முதல்ல என்னோட வணக்கத்தையும் நன்றியும் பிசிஎஸ்சிக்கு தெரிவிச்சுக்கிறேன். இந்த அருமையான நேரத்துல ஒரு அழகான டாபிக் எடுத்திருக்கோம். இண்டஸ்ட்ரியில இருக்கக்கூடிய மக்கள் எல்லாருமே இதை பத்தி நம்ம கண்டிப்பாக சிந்திக்க வேண்டிய நேரம், அதை பற்றி என்ன காரணம்னு நம்ம யோசிக்க வேண்டிய நேரம் அப்படின்றது தான் இந்த தலைப்பை சொல்லுது. தலைப்பை இங்கிலீஷ்ல சொன்னோம் அப்படின்னா சேஞ்சிங் கஸ்டமர் பர்செப்ஷன்ஸ் ஃப்ரம் பெயிண்டிங், அபவுட் பெயிண்டிங் அண்ட் பெயிண்டர்ஸ். பெயிண்டரை பற்றியும் பெயிண்டிங்கை பற்றியும் வாடிக்கையாளர்கள் என்ன நினைக்கிறார்கள், அவர்களது பார்வை. இதுதான் இந்த டாபிக்கோட, இதுதான் டாபிக். இன்னைக்கு பெயிண்டர்னா அவன் எப்படி இருப்பான், என்ன மாதிரி உடை போட்டிருப்பான், அவன் என்ன மாதிரிலாம் நடவடிக்கைகள்லாம் அவனுக்கு எப்படி இருக்கும், அவனோட வேலை என்ன, அவன் என்ன செய்வான், நம்ம வீட்டுக்கு என்ன நடக்குது அப்படின்றதெல்லாம் பத்தி தான் பேச்சு இன்றைய உரையாடல் இருக்க போகுது. அருமையான 3 பேனலிஸ்ட் இருக்காங்க. மிஸ்டர் சாந்தகுமார், அவரோட ப்ரொஃபைல் பார்த்தோம்னாக்க ரொம்ப சிறப்பா இருக்கு. அவர் 1985 ரியல் எஸ்டேட் பிசினஸ்ல இருக்கிறாரு. கண்டிப்பா அன்றிலிருந்து பெயிண்டர்லாம் வாங்கி உபயோகிச்சுட்டு பெயிண்டர்களோட அதிகமாக இன்ட்ராக்ட்லாம் பண்ணியிருப்பார். ஸோ அவரை விட்ட சிறப்பான ஒரு பேனலிஸ்ட் இந்த சப்ஜெக்ட்ல பேசுறதுக்கு கிடைக்கிறது கஷ்டம். இரண்டாவது மிஸ்டர் விஜி குரியன், அவரை பற்றி மிஸ்டர் சுரேஷ் மோகன்தாஸ் மற்றும் ஜெகதீஷ் ஆச்சாரியா 2 பேரும் நல்ல ஒரு அறிமுகம் கொடுத்தார்கள். அவர் இந்த பெயிண்ட் இண்டஸ்ட்ரியோட 50 ஆண்டு காலமாக எப்படி இருக்கு, என்ன நடந்தது, என்ன செய்யணும் அப்படின்றத பற்றினா நிறைய சொல்வதற்கு வாய்ப்புகள் இருக்கு. அதே போல மிஸ்டர் ஜெகதீஷ் ஆச்சாரியா, அவரும் ஒரு 35 ஆண்டுகள் 40 ஆண்டுகளாக இந்த பெயிண்ட் இண்டஸ்ட்ரியில இருந்து ஒரு வெட்டரன் அப்படின்னே சொல்லலாம். ஸோ இவர்கள் 3 பேரும் இந்த டாபிக்ல சில கேள்விகளை நான் முன்வைக்கிறேன். அதற்கு ஒவ்வொருத்தராக பதில் சொல்ல நான் ரிக்வெஸ்ட் பண்றேன். அதிலிருந்து சில கேள்விகளை நம்ம கேட்டு அதிலிருந்து நம்ம நடந்து போகலாம். இந்த உரையாடலை நம்ம தொடங்கலாம். ஸோ நம்ம பெயிண்டர்னு சொல்லுவோம். இன்னைக்கு நம்ம பெயிண்டர்னு நம்ம பேச வேண்டிய இதுல டெக்கரேட்டிவ் பெயிண்டர்ஸ், அதாவது வீட்டு உபயோகத்துக்கு பெயிண்ட் அடிக்க வரக்கூடிய பெயிண்டர் பற்றின அவங்களோட நடவடிக்கைகள், அவங்க அதை பற்றி தான் நம்ம பேசுறோம். பெயிண்டிங், நம்ம வீட்டுக்கு பெயிண்ட் அடிக்கிறோம். அப்போ நம்ம ஒரு ஒரு வாடிக்கையாளர் நம்ம என்ன எதிர்பார்க்கிறோம், இதுல நம்ம மனசுக்குள்ள இருக்கக்கூடிய கேள்விகள், அதை தான் நம்ம இப்ப கேட்க போறோம். சாந்தகுமார் சார் கிட்ட ஒரு 35 ஆண்டு 40 அனுபவத்துல அவர்கிட்ட கேட்கிறேன். சார், உங்களோட அனுபவத்துல ஒரு பெயிண்டிங்னா என்ன, பெயிண்டர்னா என்ன, நீங்க என்ன நினைக்கிறீங்க அதை பற்றி?
Sir, thank you for inviting to be the panelist. I'm extremely happy, and there are veterans like which we, in fact, it has been inaugurated by none other than Mr. Kurian, who is a renowned industrialist, and he was sharing his experiences. And I'm also very happy that the CEO, Mr. Jagdish Acharya, is also part of it, and Mr. Gauri Shankar is being the moderator. And I'm sure that this is a very, very useful and a purposeful thing. The only thing is that what I would like to say, we have been in the business for almost 35 to 40 years. And now the importance of painting is very, very important after this 21st century. That is, after when people have realized that painting is a must. However, you complete the building in many shapes or whatever it is, ultimate, the finishing touch and the final touch is the paint only can really reveal the beautiful effect of the building. And now, if you see, even a normal middle class family gives most importance for the interiors and because that is a part of the house, which glamours about it. And painting plays a vital role about the and I am really appreciating the topic, especially the changing customers' perception about the painting and painters. Previously, in fact, I would like to say, because the knowledge of painting was not much given importance to that, because they felt, okay, painting is something different and they buy some different way. Now, even the customers started asking, what is the type of painting you use and what are the types of materials you use? And I am very happy to know that Nippon Paints is one of the 4th largest manufacturer of paints in the world. And that's what I have read it. And because this has been started with Japanese people, and they're doing really a great job. And most important thing is that enabling the painters to share the knowledge and the techniques of it, how to go about it. That is very important, because now if you see the painters itself, once you give a proper training and proper courses, in fact, which you are also aligned with Mr. Muthuswamy, to have a 1-week session of, for a special training for painters. However you do, the professional touch is very, very important. In fact, the paint, the main, they say the 7 R techniques of paint is line, color, shape, form, value, space, and texture. That is very important, because this 7 is very important in respect to the painting. And the industry also is looking upon to the painting, because however, whatever you finish in the building, the presentability and the saleability of the apartment comes upon the painting. Now people are so much aware that they are asking about the texture and also the external painting, what is the life of it. So much of knowledge has gone into it. And I'm very happy to know that Nippon is having regular seminars and also coaching for all the painters to do it in a professional manner. And this will enable the industry to really look upon the painting aspect of it. And I'm very happy to be one of the panelists. And I wish the Nippon Paintings and the entire group a great success. We are all with you, and I wish you all the best.
நன்றி சாந்தகுமார். நீங்க ரொம்ப அழகா சொன்னீங்க. ஒரு வீடு அந்த என்னதான் அழகாக கட்டப்பட்டா கூட அதுக்கு ஒரு பொலிவை தரக்கூடியது, அது ஒரு சிறப்பை தரக்கூடியது, அது ஒரு அழகை தரக்கூடியது அப்படின்னு சொன்னா கடைசி அடிக்கக்கூடிய அந்த பெயிண்ட் தான். அதுதான் கலரை கொடுக்குது, அதுதான் வண்ணத்தை கொடுக்குது, அதுதான் அதனோட அமைப்பை தூக்கி காட்டுறது. ஸோ இதை இன்றைய சூழ்நிலையில பெயிண்ட் ஒரு கஸ்டமர் டெக்ஸ்டர் பெயிண்ட் இருக்கா, என்ன மாதிரி பெயிண்ட் இருக்குது, என்ன அப்படின்லாம் கேள்விகள் கேட்கக்கூடிய நிலைமை வந்திருக்கு அப்படின்னு சொல்றீங்க. ஒரு பில்டரா உங்க அனுபவத்தை சொன்னீங்க. ரொம்ப நன்றி. தேங்க்யூ. தேங்க்ஸ் a lot for your
தேங்க்யூ கௌரி சங்கர். மிக அருமையாக ரொம்ப பார்த்த மகிழ்ச்சியாக இருக்கிறது. உங்க அளவுக்கு என்னால பேச முடியாது. பட் இந்த மாடரேஷன் இஸ் வெரி குட். I think தொடர்ந்து
thank you Shantakumar ji. I move on to Mr. Vijay Kurian on this same point. இன்றைய சூழ்நிலையில பெயிண்டரை எப்படி பார்க்கறாங்க, as a வாடிக்கையாளர்கள் எப்படி பெயிண்டரை பார்க்கறாங்க, பெயிண்டிங் எப்படி பார்க்கறாங்க? Why don't you give us some points on that, Mr. Vijay, in your own language?
Yeah, there is a difference between painting of a new building and painting of existing buildings. You know, a large part of the paints are consumed in the repainting rather than in the original painting. Because when you are originally painting a building, interior or exterior, there is no impediment in the painting process. Because the walls are there, nothing else is there. And therefore, it is very easy to continue with the painting and to complete the painting and clean up the whole place. But many of the painters, their livelihood comes from the repainting of houses or shops or buildings, as the case may be. And that's where I think the customer finds the painter is not looking at the, let's say, getting the customer onto his wavelength. Because for the customer, not just the painting, which is all the walls, but the pre-painting activity and the post-painting activity are the ones which give him a lot of problems. Because first of all, he has to move everything out to be able to paint. And he has to make sure that nothing falls on the items which are in the house, whether his carpets or his sofas or whatever it is doesn't get spoiled. Then once the painting is over, he has to make sure that everything is put back in the place and so on. And during painting, you have the problem of the smell, depending on what paints you are using, or the dust, because you have to scrape the walls or whatever that may be. And of course, there are now a lot of things that is possible to be able to do without dust, like the express paintings of Berger or Asian Paints have got also the same kind of products, which can reduce the inconvenience that is caused to the customer. I was telling somebody yesterday that I've been running a paint company for a long period of time. And anytime it came to painting my own flat or house, I said, let's put it off as much as possible because it's a nuisance. And that is what has to be avoided in the minds of the customer by the painting contractor or the painter. Saying, look, we will do the job for you without it creating too much of an inconvenience for you. We will come and assess what all has to be done before the painting, what has to be done in terms of moving things out and protecting them during the time of painting, how to complete the painting without the entire house being in chaos. And that's what one has to look at in terms of the painter being not just someone who satisfies the customer, but who delights the customer ultimately. So the pre-painting activities and the post-painting activities are two areas where I think all our painters have to be trained. And that's when is a good painter.
Yeah, ரொம்ப அருமையான பாயிண்ட்ஸ் மிஸ்டர் விஜய் குரியன் சார். அதாவது நீங்க என்ன சொன்னீங்கன்னாக்கா பெயிண்டிங் ஜாபே ஒரு பெயின்ஃபுல் ஜாபா கஸ்டமருக்கு ஃபீல் ஆகுது அப்படின்னு நீங்க சொன்னீங்க. அவங்களோட எண்ணங்கள் வந்து ஐயோ பெயிண்ட் அடிக்கணும்னா அப்படின்னாலே ஒரு பயத்தை கிரியேட் பண்ணக்கூடிய ஒரு நிலைமையில இருக்கு. காரணம் என்ன அப்படின்னு கேட்டா டஸ்ட் வருது. ஏன்னா புது வீட்டு பெயிண்டிங் அடிக்கும்பொழுது அதனோட நிலைமை வேற, அதனோட வழி வேற. வீடுக்குள்ள மக்கள் இருக்கும் பொழுது, அவங்க வாழ்ந்து கொண்டே இருக்கும் பொழுது ரீபெயிண்டிங் அடிக்கிறத நிலைமை வேற. இன்னைக்கு பெயிண்டிங்லேயே பாத்தீங்கன்னாக்கா புது பில்டிங்க்கு பெயிண்ட் அடிக்கிறது வந்து 30% தான், 70% வந்து ரீபெயிண்டிங் அடிக்கக்கூடியதான். அப்படி இருக்கும் பொழுது அந்த ரீபெயிண்டிங் ஒர்க்கை எப்படி கஸ்டமர் டிலைட்ஃபுல்லாக அவருடைய எப்படி சந்தோஷமாக அதை ஏற்றுக்கொள்வது அப்படின்றத பாக்குறது தான் நீங்க சொல்றீங்க. அதனோட காரணத்தையும் அழகா சொன்னீங்க. எவ்வளவு டஸ்ட் எல்லாம் வருது, அதனால ஏற்படக்கூடிய தொந்தரவுகள்னால கஸ்டமர் எவ்வளவு தூரத்துக்கு அவாய்ட் பண்றாங்க அப்படின்லாம் சொன்னீங்க. ஸோ இதை எப்படி நம்ம மாத்துறது, இதை மாற்றி அமைப்பது எப்படி, அதை கஸ்டமருக்கு வந்து புரிய வைப்பது எப்படி, இல்ல பெயிண்டரை வந்து மாற்றுவது, பெயிண்டிங்கை மாற்றுவது எப்படி, இதற்கு என்ன செய்யணும்? ஸோ வாட் ஆர் தி சேஞ்சஸ் we have to do it to change this perception of this. I would like to put this question to Mr. Jagdish ji to tell us, you know the perception, how the painting is, or the painter is looked at it and all that. What to be done to change this? You have any plans?
Yeah, thank you. You know, as Mr. Kurian said, how do we make a pre-painting activity less painful for the customer? How do you make the post-painting activity a delight for the customer? And in the process, there is again the painting activity where it should be least cumbersome to the painter. So to do that, there is no other way but to skill the painting and the painting contractor in some of these softer aspects of managing these issues. What are the skills we can develop in ensuring that the person who is painting, before he starts the painting, manages the pre-painting exercise in such a way that it gives least disruption to the customer, to the household? You know, Mr. Kurian was saying, though being in the paint company, he used to dread getting his own house painted. And it is true with all of us. It takes a tremendous amount of effort for us to get repainting done to our houses. But it's a very natural thing if you go abroad for people to get it repainted every so often, because the entire process is so least disruptive. So what are the skills required in making this least disruptive? Something that for us we have to think about. How do we use mechanized tools to ensure that there is least dust created while painting? How do you plan painting? You know, proper masking, ensuring the place where what was, you know, one of my experiences living in Australia was, Gauri, that whenever I used to give the house for painting, I lived for many years. So there was a painting cycle which we did and the house owners did. I never owned a house. It was as a tenant, but the disruption we had to face. But I must tell you, confess that we used to never bother about it, because the painter would come and after the paint, we would not even know that he had come and gone. It was as smooth as that possible. So it is possible. It has been proved that proper skilling and professional outlook will help change the painter's mindset, and the customer will be a beneficiary out of this. Management, you know, of least disruption is something that we should be thinking about. Then there are value-added services. You know, Mr. Shantakumar spoke about 7 pillars and very nicely put. There are value-added services. You know, Mr. Hariharan Putran is also on the call. Maybe later on we can have a webinar. how to select colors easily, how to make it very easy for the lady of the house to select colors. And that value-added service the painter can give. So Gauri, this is what I had in mind. And if Mr. Kurian would like to add to it, I will request him to add to it, because I know he has some very good thoughts on how to improve the skilling, if it's okay with you, Gauri. I just request Mr. Gauri.
Yeah, ரொம்ப ரொம்ப கரெக்டா சொன்னீங்க மிஸ்டர் ஜெகதீஷ். ஒரு ப்ரொஃபஷனல் அப்ரோச் இன்றைக்கு இருக்கக்கூடிய சூழ்நிலையில பெயிண்டரோ பெயிண்டிங்கோ ஒரு ப்ரொஃபஷனல் அப்ரோச்சோட செஞ்சோம் அப்படின்னாக்க கஸ்டமருக்கு ஒரு டிலைட்ஃபுல்லா இருக்கும் அப்படின்றது நீங்க தெளிவா சொன்னீங்க. உங்களோட ஆஸ்திரேலியால நீங்க உங்க வீட்டுக்கு பெயிண்ட் அடிக்கும் பொழுது அதுல ஏற்பட்ட அனுபவங்கள், அவங்க வந்துட்டு போன சுவடு கூட தெரியாம, அவங்க எப்படி வந்தாங்க, எப்படி வேலை செஞ்சாங்க, அதுக்கு பிறகு எப்படி போனாங்க அப்படின்றது கூட தெரியாத அளவுக்கு, பெயிண்டிங் நடந்ததா அப்படின்னே தெரியாத அளவுக்கு ஒரு இருந்ததா நீங்க சொன்னீங்க. பாராட்டுக்கள். தேங்க்யூ. ஸோ ஐ நவ் ரிக்வெஸ்ட் மிஸ்டர் விஜி டு ஆட் ஆன் தீஸ் பாயிண்ட்ஸ். ஹவு டு சேஞ்ச் தி பர்செப்ஷன், எப்படி அதை மாற்றலாம், எப்படி அந்த கஸ்டமருக்கு அந்த ஒரு ஃபீலிங்கை வித்தியாசமா கொடுக்கலாம், பெயிண்டரும் பெயிண்டிங்கை பற்றியும் வித்தியாசமா எப்படி சொல்லலாம், உங்களோட கருத்துக்கள் மிஸ்டர் விஜி?
I think the perception of the painter as a professional starts with the first interaction, house owner and the painter. Painter comes in, he just looks at the walls. You need so many liters of paint, or you need so many other things for painting. He is not in the least bit bothered about what is in the house and how we ensure that you say, oh, that's for the householder, he will move it out the way he wants it. But that's not what is expected by the house. If you're going to paint, then you've got to look at all these. Apart from looking at the walls and the problems of the walls which he can solve, or he can't solve, but he will recommend somebody who can solve it, like a plumber or an electrician or a mason or someone who can solve those problems. He should also look at, how do I do a job well without disrupting the life of the house owner? And that's where the first interaction would itself create a mental image of how professional the painter is. Right? He may not be the best in terms of application, right, which can always be sorted out. But if he is as good in terms of the preparation areas and recommending to the householder, there starts a of it. And then the second point, when it comes to painting, many of the painters today, when they come in, they don't come in with all the tools that are required. They will come in and say, okay, I've got this and I've got to now go and get 2 brushes. So he will leave everything and go to get the 2 brushes. So that kind of not coming prepared with all the things that are required for the painting and cleaning up increases the time of work that is there. He will say, can you give me some waste? Can you give me some, tools or something or the other? That shows that he is not a professional painter. So he doesn't have the tools of his trade. Like the Amatan Pora, Katri illenna enna seivan. So, அதே மாதிரி தான் பெயிண்டர் போறது, ப்ரஷ்ஷு எல்லாம் கையில் இருக்கணும், ஸ்டெரரு, the
buckets. Mostly
vessels
they ask
to
for the
add
buckets.
more. Yeah, so he will ask for very many things from the house to do his work. That is the second point in terms of the painting, actual painting. Then, once he is finished, there are 2 things that he has to show in terms of professionalism. One is that if the paint, and most of the paints these days are water-based paints, if they fall and dry, it's very difficult. And therefore, he has to make sure that there is enough newspapers or tarpaulin or whatever is put so that whatever falls from the ceiling or from the wall doesn't fall on the floor. It is maybe either tiles or marble or whatever. And so that has to be taken care of and ensure that, okay, I remove all this and the floor exactly like it was before I started painting, rather than drips and drabs all over. So these are the things that needs to be taken care of to have the painter be a professional. And to a large extent, the customer looks at a plumber or an electrician as a professional, because whatever they do, if they don't do well, it creates a problem for them, because if the pipe in the kitchen is not set properly, 10 times a day or 15 times a day, the paint, you don't need to use it. So you don't really look at it from that point of view. But the pre-painting and the post-painting activities are more critical in that, and also coming with all the tools required for his profession.
ரொம்ப கரெக்டா சொன்னீங்க. ஒரு பெயிண்டர் வரும்பொழுது அவர் எப்படி ஃபர்ஸ்ட் இம்ப்ரெஷன் இஸ் தி பெஸ்ட் இம்ப்ரெஷன், அவர் கஸ்டமருக்கு எப்படி அதை அறிமுகப்படுத்துறாரு, அப்புறம் சும்மா வரும்போது வெறுங்கையோட வராதைக்கு அதற்கு தேவையான எல்லா விதமான உபகரணங்களும் டூல்ஸோடு நீங்க வரணும்னு சொன்னீங்க. ரொம்ப சரியான பாயிண்ட் மிஸ்டர் விஜய் குரியன். பெயிண்டர்கள் இன்றைய சூழ்நிலையில இந்த மாதிரி சில குறைபாடுகளோட வருவதை தவிர்க்கணும். அதற்கு நம்ம என்னெல்லாம் செய்யலாம், அவங்களுக்கு சொல்லி கொடுக்கணும். இந்த மாதிரி செய்யும் பொழுது கஸ்டமருக்கு அது பிடிக்காம போகுது, பக்கெட் இல்லாம வருது, எல்லா வேலைகளும் இப்படியே விட்டுட்டு பிரஷ் வாங்குறேன்னு போகிறது, இதெல்லாம் நடைமுறையில் நம்ம பார்க்கறது தான். இதெல்லாம் இல்லாம இருந்தால் கஸ்டமர் ரொம்ப சந்தோஷப்படுவாங்க. அதே போல ப்ரீ பெயிண்டிங் அண்ட் போஸ்ட் பெயிண்டிங், அதாவது பெயிண்ட் அடிப்பதற்கு முன்னால் பெயிண்ட் அடிப்பதற்கு பின்னால் ஏற்படக்கூடிய சிரமங்களை அந்த வீட்டுக்காரருக்கு, அதாவது வாடிக்கையாளர்களுக்கு சிரமங்களை குறைத்து கொடுத்தாலே அந்த வாடிக்கையாளர் ரொம்ப சந்தோஷப்படுவாங்க. அவங்க அடிக்கடி பெயிண்ட் அடிக்கணும்னு ஆசைப்படுவாங்க. அதை உபயோகப்படுத்துவதும் இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணுவாங்க. Now coming, it looks like that it is all requires more in terms of skilling the people, making the people understand that these sort of learning is very much required. Mr. Jagdish Ji, as the CEO of the PCSC, tell us something, how we can train and educate, upgrade the skill set of these painters so that the customers and consumers feel that painting and painters are really needed and feels good about it.
Thank you, Gauri, and I really very happy with the points that's being brought about. See, there are two ways, there are two important areas of skilling, which is one is, as you know, as a trainer, the domain expertise itself, and the second one is the softer part, the generic competencies which are there. Now, in both areas, there is a lot of scope for skilling to be done. Let me start with the domain. What PCSC is now trying to do is finding out how we can add value to the work that is being done by the painter. For example, we have contacted the people who make spray guns. We have contacted the people who make the tools. And we will be again contacting people who are good in color technology. In fact, we are already in discussion with a company, 3 companies, Gratco, Marca, and Innovators, where we would like to include some of their training programs for training the painter to improve his skill in such a way that the painter should feel within himself that he's being treated like an engineer. One of the best responses I got when I was talking to a painter when we were doing a program, I said, what is the difference that is made? He said, sir, now customer looks at me as if I'm an engineer, So that is important. Why she looks at him as an engineer? because the lady of the house found that his knowledge about surfaces was very good, that he was able to provide a solution to the, like Mr. Kurian had said, you're a doctor, you go to a place, you write prescription, and you actually also a surgeon there. So the painter should get that feeling that he's someone who's prescribes and who is also able to do the operation. So that feeling we can give if we are able to provide them with valuable tools and knowledge how to use the tools. So domain expertise is we are looking at, Gauri, and we are looking at it very holistically by bringing in more stakeholders. The second one is the domain expertise. I think Mr. Raghunathan just mentioned that use of mobile phones, how we can use mobile phones to take a photograph and put the colors there, show to the lady of the house how the room looks like with that color, and then look at some place where waterproofing is to be done, how to talk to her, what are the soft skills required in pre-painting itself, in terms of talking like, if a painter comes and says, first of all, as was pointed out rightly by Mr. Kurian, brings all the tools. He doesn't ask for a ladder after coming or a bucket after coming. He comes with all the tools. In fact, that is one difference I noticed with painters abroad. They come with a beautiful van which has got all kinds of things, ladders, buckets, everything. So we should try and see how we can make entrepreneurs or painters, equip themselves with all that they require. And the proper, somebody mentioned about safety in the chat. Absolutely important. How the very word that comes out from a painter in his discussion with the customer should talk about safety, So I think the painter should not only talk about safety, be professional, but also understand the trade, how to deal with people, so these are the softer skills. And we are all working towards it, Gauri Shankar. You are yourself a trainer. You are doing a lot of work in that, But as a skill council, we are now focused on improving these things.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jagdish ji. ரொம்ப சரியா எடுத்து சொன்னீங்க. ப்ரொஃபஷனலா அப்ரோச் பண்ணும்போது கஸ்டமருக்கு அவங்களுக்கு அதை புரிய வைக்க முடியும். பெயிண்டர் முதல்ல மாறணும். பெயிண்டர்களுக்கு பெயிண்டர் பெயிண்ட் அடிப்பதற்கு முன்னால், பெயிண்ட் அடிக்க பின்னால் ஒரு மொபைல் போன் இருந்ததுன்னா அதில் போட்டோ எடுத்து நான் எப்படி இருந்தது, எப்படி இருக்கு அப்படின்றதான் காட்ட முடியும். வரும்பொழுதே எல்லா ஐட்டம்ஸும் கொண்டு வரணும். நீங்க you have told, you said that in your point that how the painters in other countries come totally equipped. In fact, in many countries, the painters are not called painters; they are called interior designers. They provide they uplift the way in which the house look at it. So some countries, they are not called just painters; they are called interior designers.
Or they are also called master painters. That's a very popular term. Yeah.
Oh, is that so? Okay.
Yeah.
So though they will not have had the professional learning on interior designing and all that, but then they are the consultant on the colors. They are the consultant in terms of how the painting can be done and all that. So great. I'm really happy that PCSC is also working, and we are in the industry should work together in terms of changing the perception how the painting and painters are looked at it by the consumers. We are into that. That's a fantastic points both Mr. Vijay Kurian as well as you had brought in. And I also thank Mr. Shantakumar for his valuable initial note, and then how he looks at it from the consumer perspective as a builder, what he thinks of this. So I invite now questions from the audience. If you have any specific questions, it's open, and then we can put on to the panelists and then ask them the response for that. If already some question is there, either Mr. Suresh or Jigisha can put on that, and then we can ask that question. I understand that there was a question about the safety of the painters. I can ask Mr. Jagdish to say some few words about the safety of the painters. What should be done?
The question, Gauri, is that still painters do not care much about safety. What should we do to make them aware of safety is the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Suresh, and thank you, Mr. Raghunathan, for asking that question. Now, let me tell you honestly what I feel about this. I am worried. I am worried because I don't think we are addressing this issue as an industry properly. And this is a larger issue. It's not just painter who is involved. It's a larger issue. Let me first talk about the problems I see, as you rightly said, Mr. Raghunath. My heart pains. I feel very worried and concerned when the painter uses his hand to mix without gloves. When the painter uses his hands, dips his hand with a cloth and tries to paint these bars or the iron rods so that because it can't reach every place, his hand does it, and he's been doing it for many years. It's a matter of shame that we should allow this to happen. But we can say don't do it. But what's the alternative? What have we given him as an alternative to sort that problem of his? I think this is where, we as an industry have a lot of work to do. I know very big contractors do take care of safety procedures very much because the law requires them to do it. But small time contract painting contractors who do subcontracting for the big contractors, who cannot afford to pay the full wages, who take casual labor from around the street in the morning, and that fellow might have been a painter, the person may have been a painter the previous day, today is somebody else. And this is a fact of life. In India, because of the kind of work that they do, they are multi-skilled. We have to respect it. We have to train them. But we cannot just say don't do it. We have to give an alternative. So it's a deeply concerning thing about safety, how to ensure disposal, how to dispose the paint material properly. This is again another big question. If the painter doesn't have a proper outlet, what is he going to do? So we need to go to him with solutions. Now, to answer your question, what is the Paint and Safety, Paint and Coating Skill Council doing? We are concerned about it, and we have got a proper NOS in place for every curriculum on safety, health and development, EHS NOSes. And if they follow those NOSes properly, there is no issue. But the question is, how do you get them to implement? For that, the main person responsible in the chain is the customer. Customer will need to pay more. If you want better safety, customer will need to pay more. Unfortunately, Mr. Shantakumar will agree with me. Unfortunately, paint is in a sector, construction sector, where paint is the last item on which you spend money. And that is when your pocket gets sort of empty. And so you compromise. You say, no, 15% cheaper is fine, I'll go for it. Now, if you get 15% cheaper, you will not get the right protection for the painter. You will not be able to give safety the importance it is due to. So these are issues, Gauri. I don't have a straight answer, but I'm just saying this, that our curriculum has a very good NOS built onto safety, health and environment. We are trying our best to ensure they are implemented, but it's a bigger change that is required. The entire industry has to change beginning from the customer. You got to pay for
point, sir. Yeah. Very good point, sir. Aதாவது safety and the பாதுகாப்பு என்ற பாயிண்ட் பத்தி பேசணும் அப்படின்னா டெக்னீஷியன் மட்டும் அதை எடுத்துக்கொண்டு நடந்தா பத்தாது. கஸ்டமரும் அதுக்கு உண்டான விலையை கொடுக்க தயாரா இருக்கணும். அவங்களும் ஒரு கஸ்டமர் வந்து எப்படி ஒரு பெயிண்டரோட பாதுகாப்பு, அவனோட வாழ்க்கை வாழ்வாதாரம் அப்படிலாம் அதெல்லாம் வந்து இருக்கணும் அப்படின்றதுக்கு அதுக்குள்ள விலையை கொடுக்க தயாராக இருக்கணும் அப்படின்னு நீங்க கரெக்டா சொன்னீங்க. பிசிஎஸ்சில அதற்கு உண்டான எல்லா விதமான பாடங்களும் இருக்கு. ஒவ்வொரு கோர்ஸ்லயும் நீங்க வந்து யூ ஆர் coaching the painters about the safety of it in every curriculum. That's what you said. That it's nice to know that. So good, thanks. And if we have any further questions from the participants, we can put on to the panelists, and then we can ask them to answer it.
Is the council working on providing the painters any price support? Mr. Ramanathan, I guess from Nippon Paints only.
Yeah. See, I would like to answer this. I'd like to invite Suresh also to respond to this. See, paint sector, the Paint and Coating Council is the question, is it, Suresh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there is support given through the government for schemes and initiatives in which we recognize the prior learning of painter, but it's not a price support. It is an incentive to join the schemes, and it is a acknowledgement of the efforts they have put in for skilling. There is no price support, and I don't think in a free market we should do anything like that. The support Paint and Coating Skill Council will offer is in ensuring that his skill is upgraded, he's reskilled, he's upskilled. So therefore he can earn better livelihood. So in a way, it is a support of earning better livelihood. So I think that is what we are committed to do and we want to do. But for that, the stakeholders must also join us. We are a non-profit organization. We provide support, but we also need to be funded. And this funding can come from primary stakeholders like the contractors who use the painters, companies who use painters for painting their service providers, providing their service providers. So it has to come from the system. To answer your question, Madhu, we are doing our best to improve livelihoods of painters.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
This question is to PCSC, essentially saying, in all our skilling work that we do and the effectiveness that we are bringing to the painter, what is the extent of the productivity improvement that you're looking at? Essentially, to ensure, because most painters, when we're talking about the small contractors, take a job on a consolidated amount basis. Now, if he can do that work instead of 5 days in 3 days, because of his productivity, he's got more time available to do more jobs. That's one way of increasing his income rather than just getting a higher payment per square foot from the customer. And I think we need to look at that very clearly in terms of productivity improvement. How can we train them?
I completely take your suggestion on board, sir. There are two ways we are planning to do is really develop a proper productivity matrix, because if we want our certificates to be made to be valuable, we have to convince people that after skilling there is some benefit to them, to the contractors or to the company. And therefore, we are now thinking seriously of what we call monitoring and evaluation matrices, including productivity, so that we are able to completely say that through this skilling, this is the advantage you get. Second, sir, we are also looking at the cost savings to the contractors. How wastage, reduction of wastage, improvement of productivity actually is gainful for the contractor. Now, these are thoughts, work in progress, but Mr. Kurian, rest assured it will have some matrices, at least to start with. We can actually evolve and do better as we go along, but to start at least, we will certainly have such matrix in place.
There is a question for Mr. B.G. Kurian. In your experience, sir, has any paint company tried fixing labor rates for painting in say, metros or tier 1 or tier 2 towns? What do you think of that? Is that a good idea?
Unless the painters are under your control, that is impossible. We're talking about a free market and a free entrepreneur who decides what he needs to charge. So it is very difficult to say. One can always say how long it will take to apply, 1 liter of paint. But how much he should charge for that, whether it's, because to a large extent, whether it's a high price product or a low price product, the amount of effort required to apply 100 square feet is more or less the same. But for a high price product, as you know, they charge a higher labor rate. And the lower price product, they charge a lower per square foot rate. So that's something that's very difficult for any paint company to fix for the painting rate.
Also, I'd just like to add, Suresh, to that answer to that question. As Mr. Kurian said, it is very difficult to fix the rate because paint is not only about the usage of paints in terms of liters, but also the deposition of paints. For example, there is an optimal deposition of paint, you are aware. And so invariably what happens is, if there is extra deposition of paints, it is actually bad for the system. And similarly, if there is less deposition of paints, if the profile is very high and the thickness of the paint is less, that also exposes the surface to wear and tear and weather conditions. So optimum usage of paint is something that is always a struggle. In fact, when companies are asked questions, sir, you told us we will require 30 liters, but we have consumed 40 liters. Actually, company is not to be blamed because the applicator has done some error. And it could be that the practical coverage of the paint because of the volume solids may also get affected. So there are many issues. So I think this is something we need to understand how to optimize. For that, best training is possible. I forgot to mention, Gauri, about Skillvary also, which has come up with the portable, simulators for painters. So we'll try and use them. We have asked them to look at brushing and rolling also, which will help us get optimal levels of painting required, and calculate. So now with analytics really there and with so many things possible, I think this thing about measurement will help determine labor costs or cost of painting better. And then we can think of labor rates and other things. But till that time, it is a very difficult, it's an engineering material which is not easily calculated because of so many variations.
Can I ask one more quick question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we are talking about training painters. And if you see in most places abroad, the painting, especially the interior painting, is done by the household people themselves, the do-it-yourself. Is PCSE looking at the possibility of training lay people on how to paint?
Sir, this thought came to me. In fact, you'll be surprised. Just thinking about it today, I think if painting activity is marketed as a hobby, training people to paint as a hobby, it may be a start of that DIY kind of concept. I know in England, there are many doctors who like to go out for a week just to learn the skill of painting their houses. Of course, they do it with the purpose of doing it at their home. But maybe we can start it as a hobby thing, sir. This came to my mind this morning as I was thinking how to expand our business and our not business, but our objective of imparting training. I think making painting as teaching painting to be a hobby can be a good start.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Oh, can I add something to that, Jagdish?
Sure.
Only deterrent why I think DIY has not been a great thing in India is the quality of construction as well. If the surfaces are not smooth and you need to spend a lot of time and energy to get them to be smooth, remove dampness, itself is a put off for the customer. Whereas if you have clean walls, a DIY works very well. So it is more urban phenomena, probably, I think. And also our paints are not sold on ready-to-use basis. There is thinning and dilution and all that these guys have to understand. Whereas abroad, paints are DIY products. You just open the can and start application. So that also has to change. Probably these are the reasons why people find it cheaper to go for painters and the cost of painters, of course.
Very, very good, Suresh. நல்ல points. Mr. Jagdish also made a very good point on in terms of what he is planning to do with regard to the DIY and all that. ரொம்ப சரியான உரையாடல் நடந்தது நம்ம இப்போ. பெயிண்டர், நம்ம அதாவது பெயிண்டிங் எப்படி, பெயிண்டரோட பார்வை கன்சியூமர் மூலமா எப்படி இருந்தது, அதற்கு என்ன காரணங்கள், அதை எப்படி சரி செய்வது, அதற்கு பிசிஎஸ்சியில் என்னென்ன ட்ரைனிங்ஸ் கொண்டு வர வாய்ப்புகள் இருக்கு, சேஃப்டியை பற்றின பார்வைகள் என்ன அப்படின்றதெல்லாம் நம்ம விளக்கமாக இந்த உரையாடல் பார்த்தோம். ஒரே ஒரு கேள்வி இருக்கு, அந்த கேள்விக்கு பதில் சொல்லிட்டு நம்ம வந்து I will hand over the floor to Mr. Suresh and Jagdish.
1 minute, Gauri. I think there are 3 more questions. If you don't mind, let's quickly answer them. One is discussion about Mr. Raghunathan. We have answered some of the questions. Mr. Kannan had a question. Discussion is explaining only city side painters, not rural, who are less opening. Any luck for them? I just explained to Mr. Kannan what we are doing for the rural side painter. It's good you asked me that question, asked us that question. You know, we are now presently training 3,000, not training, we are doing a recognition of prior learning for 3,000 painters, including women painters, across, I think, 15 districts. Am I right, Suresh?
Yeah, in 25 districts in rural areas of Uttar Pradesh and so on. Yeah.
And we are now also, there is the certificate is important for them to get jobs through the Gram Panchayats. So it is not just city side painters we are talking about. We are talking about painters who are gone back to their villages, who are getting work from the Gram Panchayat. And I think that is being done, Mr. Kannan. The other thing about how to get an RPL certificate, there was a question. We will certainly respond to you, Mr. Rajshekhar, and we'll get back to you how to identify from the customer point of view a proper painter listed on the portal or something. We will get back to you separately. I'll just please write down your email address on the chat box and we'll get back to you, sir.
Super.
Thank you. Sorry, Gauri, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No problem. So, Mr. Kannan அவர்களுக்கு வந்து சரியான பதில் கிடைச்சிருக்குன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். சிட்டியில் ரூரல், அதாவது சின்ன டவுன் லெவல்லையும் வில்லேஜ் லெவல்லையும் இருக்கக்கூடிய பிசிஎஸ்சி என்ன செய்யும், அதை என்ன செய்வாங்க அப்படின்னு. ரொம்ப சரி, ரொம்ப நன்றி. இந்த கருத்துக்களோடு இந்த உரையாடலை நான் வந்து முடிச்சுக்கிறேன். சரி, ரொம்ப சிறப்பான உரையாடல், சிறப்பான பார்ட்டிசிபேஷன். I thank Mr. Jagdish, Mr. Vijay Kurian and Mr. Shantakumar for the valuable inputs. And I hand over the floor to Mr. Suresh for further moving on the process. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I would request Jagdish to give his closing remarks and followed by Mr. Muthuswamy giving his vote of thanks.
Thank you, Suresh.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is a great start. Mr. Kurian, thank you for your blessings and thank you for inaugurating the webinar series. We have recorded this program and we will take notes of it from it and implement some of the ideas that have come here. Mr. Shantakumar spoke about 7 pillars of value addition. Mr. Kurian said we must think in terms of how to make pre-painting, post-painting and during painting an activity which is disruption-free, stress-free and enjoyable and ending with a delight to the customer, for the customer. We also spoke through the questions that came about on safety practices, on many other issues related to safety, health and the environment part. We also spoke about how to make, what is that the Skill Council needs to do to make this profession an aspirational one, and how to sell the concept of the value of the certificate we put through measurements of productivity and benefits to the not only to the end user but the applicators. So that was a very good session, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Kurian. Thank you, Mr. Shantakumar.
Thank you.
And last but not the least, I'll do my thanks because Muthuswamy will do his, but Gauri, you conducted the session extremely well. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Very true. Very true. Thank you, participants. Great thanks to the panelists and special thanks to Gauri. Done very well. The time கம்மியா இருக்கிறதுனால உங்களால எல்லா கொஸ்டினும் எங்களால ஏத்துக்க முடியல. There is always a next time. மீண்டும் நாம் சந்திப்போம். கொஸ்டின் கேளுங்க. நாங்க கான்டாக்ட் இருக்கு. நீங்க கான்டாக்ட்லயே நீங்க உங்களோட கேள்வியை கேட்கலாம். நீங்க தமிழ்ல கேட்கலாம். நாங்க கான்டாக்ட் பண்ணி உங்களுக்கு பதில் வரும். நம்ம இந்த தொடர்பு தொடர்ந்து சேர்ந்தே இருப்போம். இது ஒரு பெரிய ஃபேமிலியா நம்ம நடத்துக்கணும். Thank you very much to all participants and the panelists. Great. Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.